Hello, my name is Jessie Walton, and for the 2021 Undergraduate Symposium on Research and Scholarship, my project is the Revelation Booth. My research question begins with what kind of creative installation and design measures could be taken to create awareness on current Native American social and environmental issues that would elicit a viewer's call to action response. The rationale behind it starts with a statement from a Navajo medicine man I once met. We're all five-fingered human beings. We're all born one of the same, just as the line on the palms of our hands. We are all living human beings. We ache with the same heart and breathe with the same lungs. Race, ethnicity, and upbringing does not fully define who we are. We should treat each other on the same consciousness that we all are, human. This is a value brought up in many indigenous religions, and it creates a greater impact now in today's world. I identify as a biracial Native American woman, holding ancestry to the Cherokee and Muskogee Creek Nation, and will soon become a member of the Creek tribe. I have gone years ignoring my indigenous ancestry and myself for fear of being different, claims of being ingenuine, and the shame in being a part of a minority that makes me feel invisible. Now I see the true value in who I am, where my roots come from, and the rich culture within the indigenous people. As we fight in diverse protests, legal issues, and shed light on mistreatment, we must understand this concept more than ever and push for a universal understanding of it by educating the audience, one community at a time. My end goal with this project was to bring outer communities to be aware of Native American communities and the social and environmental issues, to elicit a call to action for the greater Native American nation. Indigenous communities are still alive and relevant today. We are not just simple texts in history books. Thus, the importance for creating an installation that immerses the viewer on showing the protests of Indigenous communities and various social issues and instilling empathy or a call to action to which they can donate towards Indigenous causes. My beginning research for the Revelation booth began intensively throughout the summer of 2020. For the graphic design Art D 4070 course specifically, we had to create 9 diverse project iterations towards solving our thesis question. I began my personal research by asking myself a series of broad questions that could be solved in several ways or with multiple answers. Questions like, what if a culture disappeared? What if you were erased from history? What would you do to stand up for others? How do you give people incentive? How do you bring up important conversations? And so on. Every answer to the questions I created, more questions were raised to further create a solid definition of what I wanted to accomplish and how to create this accomplishment. To further their research, I spoke to several Native American artists and asked about what drives them and how their culture and upbringing influences it. I also attended webinars of speakers and storytellers to influence how my research could attract viewers in various ways. And then another avenue of research included speaking with School of Art professors residing in graphic design, sculpture, and printmaking, all giving me further ideas on how to create an eye-catching installation that could be made. On the right-hand side shows some of my beginning research with the questions that would lead all over the page to diverse answers, which would lead back to several other questions, and so on. Here are a few of the projects that I created in the 9 iterations, focusing on the different protests, how the type and the font was used on cardboard, how maybe it would be used in a branded system, like on a candle and selling candles to support Indigenous communities, or in the final way that led me to produce iterations towards my final project, which was creating layers of different languages. I started with Navajo, and then Cherokee, and then English, seeing how those interacted with each other through thin pieces of paper and seeing what that would create. The typography research. After understanding how the structure of the installation would be created, the next focus was on fusion typography. For the panels inside the installation, I wanted to merge the fusion of 2 cultures that not only I'm a part of, but to communicate in a new, unique way. The fusion was created based off the Cherokee language and the English language, both through the fusion of sound. Though with further research of the Cherokee alphabet, I found the same vowel sound occurs in the English language throughout the entire alphabet. By utilizing the sound as a fusing factor, I was able to create an understanding of how the letters would be merged. Rules for the typography were laid out as stated. The Cherokee characters were thicker. The English characters were thicker. The Cherokee were thinner. Characters connected with curves or serifs, and they were also made in a script format, which were handwritten. A grid was created to create uniformity in size and in shape and organized by vowel sounds with the A-E-I-O-U. After being handwritten, they were digitally scanned in and cleaned up through design software, ready for being transferred to the panels. As you see on the right-hand side, there are different examples of what that typography fusion would look like. and the basic rules down at the bottom left of what I utilized to create that final grid you see in the bottom right. Here's the gallery plan that I created for the final installation. It evolved even more from this point to create the final successful imagery. It shows the exterior on the outside of the panels, the above bird's eye view of the measurements of how much of the gap of in between that would have, and that the entrance that would be 36 to more inches for ADA standards for wheelchair accessibility. And then finally the interior, which was expanded open to see what the panels would look like on the inside and how the podium and the computer would interact with it. The installation and video tests. Next, after understanding how the layout would be formatted, the transfer method needed to be honed. After several transfer tests of acetone, transfer pen, gel medium, and polyacrylic onto birch plywood, the results led to the conclusion of using the gel medium through the Xerox transfer method. The Xerox transfer method was the gel medium created to make a printed look like on plywood, while the other tests were either too faded or soaked into wood. The Xerox method is done with the gel medium by printing the imagery in a mirrored state, then glued face down onto the plywood. After 30 minutes to an hour, the paper can be taken off the plywood with water and scrubbed with a gentle brush or by hand. This method of the lettering on the plywood became textured, making a rougher look towards it. Also during the same time, the video tests for the installation were created through Adobe After Effects and Premiere Pro. The language used in the video was drafted and critiqued several times before the final product was produced, ensuring a direct message would be portrayed to the installation viewer. On the right-hand side, the two top images show examples of the Xerox transfer successfully happening along with the tests of the acetone, gel pen, and gel medium and polyacrylic. The bottom two images show screen caps from the video tests. The ephemera progress. Also decided to be included inside the installation was ephemera piece that the viewer would be able to take with them. With prior knowledge in laser engraving, the ephemera would be created with a thin plywood, similar to the panel installation itself. On the back of the ephemera coin piece was a circular QR code that was created that would lead the viewer to a link tree that they could donate to various causes, learn how to be a Native American ally, rewatch the installation video that would be inside the Revelation booth, or experience a 360 view of the Revelation booth using their phone or whatever smart device that they had. On the right-hand side are two of the beginning drafts of that I had of the link tree and what the beginning imagery of that looked like, and the beginning imagery of the drafts of the ephemera coin. The installation assembly. On the installation day for the set of the 3 panels, it took several days in the sculpture studio, cutting, refining, and smoothing the panels to a professional look, while also making sure that the surface was smooth enough for the Xerox transfer. After the panels were cut down, several Xerox transfer sessions were laid out onto the panel, which created striking visuals and further elevated the purpose of the language and created confusion when the viewers would walk into the installation. With the language abstraction on the side panels and being unrecognizable to the common outside community, it can create a sense of frustration or feeling of unknown inside the viewer, which is exactly the Revelations booth's purpose. The central panel held in a series of questions that asked directly at the viewer. With all the panels standing at 7 feet tall, they would loom over the average American, further creating a sense of entrapment inside this booth as they are surrounded by questions, unknown text, music, and more. The Revelation booth is self-standing, making a statement and holding its own without assistance. Created with an extra wood from the panels, there were 6 cutout leg mounts that were made to hold up the self-standing installation. And on the right-hand side, the top right image shows how those foot mounts were created, while the top left shows the Xerox transfer in play with the 2 side panels. The bottom left is a picture of me using the Xerox transfer method and scrubbing away the paper, while the bottom right shows the beginnings of the final product of the central panel. Here are the pictures of the final installation. I decided to go with a red and yellow paint with tribal influenced patterns on the outside, along with the Xerox transfer, the Revelation booth title on all sides on the outside external panels. On the interior has the Fusion typography, along with the questions in bold words. Overlayered of the Fusion typography is tribal constitutions from the Muskogee and the Cherokee tribe, the 2 tribes that I align with. And the furthest right-hand image shows the video playing, saying my voice is insignificant, I feel invisible, and I am something else, with a zoomed-in image on the red, yellow, and black painted podium. Here are two zoomed-in images of the Xerox transfer onto the panels. The left-hand side shows the main central panel, and the right-hand side shows an image of what the side panels would look like with the overlaying of the Fusion typography. Here's the final video that plays inside the Revelation booth.
How lonely it is to be Native American. I don't think people understand this idea of colonization. I said, well, what's it like to be Native American?
So now, here are the pictures of the final ephemera pieces. This is a zoomed-in picture on the left of the coins, showing two alterations of what the final images looked like. On the top, it shows the word unity in the Fusion typography that I created. A little bit further on, there is the Cherokee language that says cultural community. And then with some of the images of the QR codes on the back of the coins, there were about 75 coins that were placed out on top of the podium along with the video. On the right-hand side shows the video where it says grab a coin, use it as a reminder to fight for the rights of Indigenous communities. They would see this image before going down and grabbing the coin and leaving the Revelation booth. Below this image shows one of the examples of the final iterations of the coin. My reflection. The overall installation received a welcoming reaction when placed in the BFA show from March 19th to April 7th of 2021. Viewers were excited and eager to learn what the Revelation booth entailed, and the placement of the panels successfully enticed viewers into the booth to explore the looping video and encourage taking the coin ephemera with them. With the analytics behind the link tree, it further shows that the numbers behind the viewer's response to the installation improves viewer interaction, which led toward viewer education about the information being presented to them. With the intensity of research through ideation, iteration, typography, sculpture, and video created a successful final product that answered the research question of what kind of creative installation and design measures could be taken to create awareness on a current Native American social and environmental issues that would elicit a viewer's call to action response? And that answer is the Revelation booth. With the duality of the Revelation booth, if viewers needed more time to soak in the information given to them even after viewing the installation, the coin ephemera serves as a reminder and an avenue towards education and charity. If viewers would like to further their education on Native American communities, they have the avenue to do so while remembering their time in the Revelation booth. On the right-hand side shows an image of me sitting right below the installation, the Revelation booth. Thank you.